I am trying to be visible. I am trying to not just take things as they are.
Hey squirrels, welcome to ADHD, where ADHD isn't some clinical diagnosis, it's just life. I'm AV, your always honest tour guide through this beautiful mess. Over here, we're not about fixing yourself. We're about figuring out how to actually enjoy your life as you are. So grab a snack and let's go. Welcome back, squirrels, to AVHD, where we talk about neurodivergence, real life, and the systems that actually help us function in the world. Today, I am very pleased to be joined by Ginny Evans Pollard, a neurodivergent leadership coach based in the UK, who works with professionals navigating ADHD, dyslexia, dyspraxia, and autism in the workplace. Ginny works with many people who discover their neurodivergence later on in life, often when they're already established in their careers or even in leadership. Her work also focuses on supporting women and LGBTQIA+ professionals who are navigating workplaces that were never designed for the way their brains work. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about identity, masking, leadership, what workplaces still get wrong about neurodivergence, and wherever the conversation leads us. So, Ginny, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
So you mentioned that your work focuses on women, LGBTQIA+ professionals, and neurodivergent people in the workplace. And I'm curious, do these communities overlap in your work, or do you tend to work with them separately?
Well, we tend to think of people as the whole person. So it's about intersectionality. So for the people that are listening that don't know what intersectionality is, that sections of ourselves that combine or that overlap. We're not just one thing or another thing. I think we're, as human beings, we're quite complex. So there's definitely an overlap, but not always in the way that people expect, maybe. There's a lot of internalized ableism out there, basically people thinking that autistic people are this, there's lots of labels around that. So for example, and so we look at the person as a whole and in my company and empower her, and there are differences and there's some overlaps in terms of neurodivergence and queerness due to the fact that, you know, your identity as someone maybe who's maybe even now in 2026 not regarded as mainstream, whatever that means. So it's simple. Yeah. Sorry?
It means boring.
I guess, I mean, maybe, but boring sometimes is good. We know when something's boring, like we know it's kind of something's working, you know, in a way that, you know, we don't really have to worry about it. We don't have to be concerned about it. We don't have to constantly come out to people, you know. So thinking about things in terms of the cultural identity of those groups, there is an overlap often between queerness and neurodivergence. However, neurodivergence is mainly my focus these days, with supporting people who are queer as well. But then, you know, that's part of the identity rather than the focus about how our brains work differently. So that's my real focus. I hope that's clear with what I said there.
Yeah, I love what you said constantly coming out of the closet.
Yes, she's like, no, you don't.
Love that.
Yes, exactly. You have to come out as a neurodivergent person as well as being a queer person as well, because you know you have to. But you'll find you'll have a queer dar and like a gaydar, or they used to call it. I think it's a queer dar now, right?
Yeah.
Because there's a broader sense, a broader thing, and you'll probably have to have a neurodivergent dar as well. You know, to combine those, then you're right on it if you've got both. I don't know what would be the combination of neurodivergent dart and queer dart. I haven't made that one up yet.
Yeah, we're gonna audience, listen, if you have any suggestions. Extra spicy queer dar.
Yes.
So what kind of people end up usually finding you?
People who are finding me, well, at the moment, it's really people who have either been referred, obviously, to me by government program called Access to Work, or people who I know personally, and or people who have found me on LinkedIn as well, who know about my work. Usually, these people, in terms of what they're really finding tricky, is to be able to voice without shame, really. a lot of the times a lot of shame around, being in leadership or being regarded as capable, because there's lots of still in 2026. I keep on saying it's 2026, everyone. Let's acknowledge that, if someone says you're dyslexic in the workplace, they automatically think that you can't spell. Well, we know that if we're, as such as I am a dyslexic, a specialist is one of the top sort of neurodivergences which I work with. We know that it's not all about being not able to spell. It's a lot about being able to not switch things around. So I might be saying something to you in this podcast and thinking I'm saying something else. People think that I've heard people in my coaching sessions tell me people think I'm doing it on purpose. But why would you do that kind of thing on purpose? I mean, I had no idea. But people who are overperforming come to me. Maybe they've got fatigue. They're confused about feedback, even as lived experience myself of these things. People who are very capable, very intelligent, such as I am. I don't need to blow my own horn or toot it, but I will. And people who realize they've been coping, and it's just coping, and it's not sustainable in the end. And so highly professional, highly skilled people. Really what we need is clear instructions, clear feedback, and open the conversation in without the stereotypes, really. That's what people are looking for, and those are the kind of people that come to me. And maybe they will realize that it isn't about the lack of capability. I mentioned internalized ableism earlier, and are you familiar with that term?
I am. It's like internalized anything else.
Mm. Mm.
But how does that show up for people that you interact with?
Yeah, so something happened to me this week was someone was working with me on a presentation. They delivered it was this, when was this? Last week, literally like before the weekend. Someone came and they did this really good presentation, and instantly after the presentation, someone who has dyslexia, they immediately apologized, for giving perhaps that wasn't good. So it's because they're basically apologizing because they feel they could have done better, or they feel they've been told all these years that they could have been different. And it's really sad because we're not able to acknowledge, or I've just tried to apologize in this podcast just now, you might have noticed. It's trying to really acknowledge our strengths, as neurodivergent people who think differently, people who are constantly trying to mask, people trying to perform in a particular way that the systems told them to ever since they were kids. And so it's trying to undo that or unlearn that. And that is the answer to your question, I believe. I'm not sure if I answered it.
Unlearning that is so hard because I'm thinking about where it shows up for me. The way it shows up for me most often is disclaimers. I'll give you a disclaimer before I'm about to do something so that you know that the thing I'm doing that's about to be weird is going to have a purpose. So just stay with me for a second. And also I'll say, does that make sense? As if I communicated poorly. Although my special interest is communication, I'm an excellent communicator. I teach communication. I teach communication in the workplace, neurodivergent to neurotypical communication. And yet I'm constantly checking with other people as if it's my responsibility to make sure they understood my clear communication instead of allowing the onus to be on the other person, where if something is unclear, they should ask a clarifying question. Communication is a two-way street.
Yeah, it is. It made me feel a bit sad, that comment that you just said.
Yeah, honestly, it made me feel sad too.
And the reason why it made me feel sad, because I know you're just about to ask me, is because, whose responsibility is it
Right.
to be? I often ask clients this. I ask them, how much do you want to conform? Oh, and then that kind of puts them slightly questioning things all of a sudden, what do you mean? Shouldn't I be just asking myself to go with the mainstream and go with what I know and not apologize and not be who I am? Because that would be an easier way of being.
for everyone else.
Yes, well, there's a balance, I think, there, isn't there? It's like, pick your battles there. I mean, I feel controversial in saying that, but there is a lot of energy that you can put into something. Uh, you can find your people. You find your people. And
I was speaking with somebody this morning, and she has a 3.5-year-old child, was diagnosed with some kind of neurodivergence 2 years ago, although they're kinda trying to figure out why none of the medications are working.
mm,
And I said, "It's okay, it just means you're not that easily programmed, but that's okay."
mm,
Um, and she was saying she just feels totally like an alien, all alone, and I told her, "I literally only talk to neurodivergent people.
mm,
Only ever." And that's a huge privilege that I have to be able to build my online world and my workspace surrounding neurodivergent people. But it means that I have more bandwidth to interact with neurotypical people in my life, like my kid's dad. He needs all of my neurotypical energy, my neurotypical capacity, because all the other people don't matter as much as he does.
mm. Okay.
And what was really interesting, Ginny, is when you said, "How much do you want to conform?" My brain said 34%.
So you had a specific percent. Yeah, because I mean, this is really only a question which I've been asking over since I've been practicing as a coach. Since I was previously a teacher, I still am teaching
Mhm.
in the international education sector in the UK during summers for university like Manchester or King's College, the big universities there. But as a coach, that really feeds into the practice of teaching in the quite near professions. And often I did a workshop this week in Manchester University for their mini conference there, and I was asking, myself during that, how does my practice as a teacher work, from my own experience of being educated in the UK, and how does that work, how much do I want to realize that I it's challenging. It's challenging, basically. That's what I'm trying to say in a very roundabout way, that it's challenging to
Because we don't wanna be totally off grid. We
no.
could live in the woods and do our own thing and forage and chill and be, possibly pretty much fine,
Yeah,
and
I mean,
not interact with capitalism and not interact with any systems and just do our own thing. That's a choice, and there's costs, like human contact and interaction and being around people even in imperfect ways.
do you wanna do that?
I would love to have just like a big commune in the woods. I was actually speaking to somebody recently who was building a neurodivergent community, which is very, very cool.
That's very sort of new wave, isn't it? Yeah, where was
It's fascinating. What I have always wanted to do is to build sort of a foster community because I worked in group foster homes.
oh,
And
as in fostering children.
yes, fostering like the foster system. So this was in Israel, but the foster care system in the United States really needs a lot of help. This is a total digression, and if you're not here for that, you're on the wrong podcast. We'll get back to the topic in a second. Anyways, so I've always wanted to build places where the families who live in the community are all foster care families. They might have children of biological children of their own or adopted children of their own or any number of types of families. But everyone is a foster family as well, whether you have a child placed with you or not. You then have the ability to support each other. And more importantly, you can bring the resources into the community. So you have like a community center with a gym and art classes and expression opportunities and different therapists, occupational therapists or behavioral therapists.
Mm,
You bring the resources into the community, and everyone there is partaking in the same resources. So there is no other othering. This is just
mm,
what we're all doing together.
okay.
That's my dream.
That's a dream. Are you gonna do it? When's this happening? You're gonna
I don't know.
go and buy a big village in Italy, or
Yeah, I think it sounds great. I just need the money to catch up. So I'm gonna give it to God and I'll let you know.
maybe an investor? I don't know how
Catch
God was investing, but I'm not religious, so, I
investors listening and you like my idea.
yeah. Well, I think you need a was it an angel rather than a
I need an angel.
pardon the pun, yeah.
Exactly.
So yeah, any angels out there, we need to buy a village in Italy because you can buy €1 houses there, and we're gonna create
A
this idea.
sustainable burger system with built-in support.
Yeah, I mean, the point is that you've got resources that maybe would have been expensive to buy or feel that you were worthy of, it elsewhere, because access to support for neurodivergence, we see it now because I see you also would wanted to talk about later in life, which was, a lot of people that I'm working with who've been,
Yeah.
so maybe if we got that in earlier in life, now that the thought leadership around neurodivergence is changing, or that maybe there's going to be more in campaigning about it for in schools. I'm not sure how it is in the US, but in the UK, by the time people get to university, then you know, few people that I work with have been diagnosed, 'cause I also work with university students as well. So, most of them, then they're able to get their diagnosis there, but up until, like, they're 19, often they've they've kind of known, but they haven't really got the diagnosis. So I'm saying maybe if we got the opportunity to get those services earlier in life, then it would cause less grief in later life.
Absolutely. Shameless plug here for Find the ADHD Girls, where I am a board member, and our main purpose is identifying and diagnosing ADHD girls under the age of 7 when 7, 8 is really when social masking really takes a strong hold, and it becomes a lot more difficult to recognize those kind of pure ADHD symptoms.
Thanks for
Uh,
the shameless plug there.
yes,
I'll get mine in later, yeah.
absolutely. So why do people you work with discover their neurodivergence later on in life? And you were sort of alluding to the fact that, if I may interpret a little,
Yes.
forms their identity and the way they see themselves.
Yes.
How does it affect?
How does it affect the way they see themselves? The later in life diagnosis?
Mm.
In terms of okay, you've got 2 or 3 things going on, in particularly when we're talking about leadership. The gender, we've got the socialization of gender there. Which basically anyone who's not a sociologist listening means when you are a woman in leadership, although or you identify as a woman in leadership, you might also be non-binary. Your kind of your language around your acknowledgements are different. Yeah, so you're not able to, maybe as much as I've seen recently on a lot on LinkedIn about this recently, that basically you're not able to go out there and say, I'm here, I'm visible, I'm good at this, similar to what I was talking about earlier. Whereas, there's still like this also something I saw on Instagram the other day around, questions that women get asked if they're up if they're going for promotion. It's all about the way people talk about their hormones, like ask them about things about what they're wearing, this kind of thing about relationships with others. What did they have to do to get there? So there's the element of that in terms of the work that I do, and people questioning themselves. And then there's a sort of talked again about that intersectionality element where you've got people overlapping, this idea that they're neurodivergent, they haven't yet understood how those overlap, really, how those play together in the real world. So it's like a double whammy. It's like we talk about in women in careers, we talk about the glass ceiling. We also, I don't know if anyone, have you heard about the concrete ceiling?
No.
Yeah,
That sounds
this
painful.
is where we talk about, I mean, I'm not qualified into it so much as to talk about race on this program, on this podcast, but, if anyone's out there, I guess you've had someone come in to talk about race and neurodivergence, have you?
Touched on it a little bit, but I haven't had my most outspoken brave guest yet. It's
Okay,
definitely
come on, come on
fascinating.
in, come on in. So yeah, it's about, the way that intersections, specifically, maybe it would be race and being a woman or identifying as a woman, would cause a concrete ceiling. For the
Mhm.
people who are not people of color, it would be a glass ceiling, So it's about that level of barriers that are up. I think that prevent people from going in effectively into leadership. And these are the things that there could be we're not saying it's directly related experience, because I'm not there, as I said, I stress that I'm not there having had that experience myself around race. But, I had this experience about being a queer woman and being also a divergent myself. So it's about being able to step up and go beyond that in our own self-belief and move forward. So that's something that's probably learnt throughout our lives, and it's a little bits of all of that sprinkled around our brains by the time we get to later in life. I would say 30 plus, you know. I would say later in life even, because now people are living longer, aren't they? So you're still developing your brain by the time you're 30, round about finishing the development of your brain, I mean. So, yeah, so I think a neurodivergence in later life really started to form your identity by 40, by 50. These are all different decades and milestones in your life, and you're experiencing other things. For example, when you're 50, you're starting to go through the menopause as well. So there's a lot of sort of layers there of us, but we can't see them as barriers. We've got to get together, and I don't want to sound like we've got to get together. I was going to say, rise up, rise up, everybody. We're just,
Yeah, because it's what I'm hearing from you, what I feel like on a loop in my brain. It's about that moment when it is more painful to play by their rules than to make up my own rules.
Yeah.
And that's the switch, I think, when we're talking about masking. But what I'm hearing from you is those decisions look different for everyone. You make the decisions that pick and choose based on your needs and your life and your unique combination.
Yeah, but we know the consequences are. I mean, a lot of people have told me I'm brave, and I'm like, oh, it's a bit. Yeah, okay, I'm brave. Yes, okay, I take it. I'll take that. I think it's a compliment, and I'll take it, because I am trying to be visible. I am trying to not just take things as they are, and a lot of my peers, who I could think of several in my mind who obviously I won't mention on this program. They haven't, let me do so. But people who are in my similar situation, they say, but you just don't seem to care about what people think. But I think that's the point. We do really care about what people think, probably sometimes too much, So we ruminate, and we, are sensitive, because that's good to be sensitive. But then it's about learning how to work with that rejection dysphoria,
Mhm.
and if people not familiar with this idea of rejection, would you think people would be familiar with rejection dysphoria, that concept?
If they listen to the whole podcast, but maybe not.
Yeah, I mean, this is this hypersensitivity to rejection and how to deal with it if you're ADHD.
Painful.
Yeah, it's sort of, and it causes this rumination, the whole shame spiraling, So the voice is like saying, I did this wrong, fixating on something which you and then you but as if you have a coach like Ginny, you could reframe that, and say, okay, that's something, failure's gonna happen, or this is gonna happen. How do we make that a learning point rather than a, you know, shameful act that I've done?
Right. A lot of this is still work for the individual.
Mm.
A lot of organizations, many organizations say that they want to support neurodivergent employees
Mm.
now in 2026, as you say.
Mm.
From what you're seeing, where do workplaces get it right, and where do they still get it wrong?
I think, in the UK, I can only based on my experience in the UK, there's a lot of people who have this label, disability confident organisation. So that means, that you're acknowledging the fact that if someone goes through the recruitment process for a job and they understand what disability confident is, even the person who's applying, they will have certain rights under the Equality Act. in the UK to be able to ask for certain accommodations in that recruitment process. Whether people do that or not is obviously 50-50, because some people feel still the organisation's saying they're disability confident, but are they going to really give me the job based on merit, or are they going to give me the job just because, this is not my words, this is quoting others that I've spoken to, or is it they're going to give me the job because because they're pro disability and they need the token neurodivergent person in their organisation.
Yep.
So I think, yes, at the recruitment stage, yes. But what happens is when people get into the workplace, it's that thing, isn't it, of wanting to blend in, not being wanted to, often not wanting to be treated differently. And that is, okay. It's complicated. It's hard to break down in a 40-minute and 50-minute podcast. I think it's just about the workplaces having a procedure which they follow, where neurodivergent professionals feel comfortable to disclose that they have ADHD, autism, dyslexia, dyspraxia, or any other associated mental health issues, that they feel comfortable, first of all, to do that. And then they won't be discriminated and thrown out of the organisation when they do. Systems are complicated.
Yeah.
Yeah. Communication styles, not capability, is, we want to look at communication, how people are communicating. Are they infantilizing people? Are we, the word infantilize comes from this idea that you're treating people differently from others. Now that you know that they're dyslexic, does your manager start to treat you differently? There's these problems, and then the frustration that comes back from the employee. So they're frustrated. How do they then communicate with their manager about how to be different in their management approach? And even if they do, then what's the follow-up from that? How can they be present? How can they really follow their diversity as an organization, follow their diversity policies? And, there we see the gap. The organizations say they value diversity, but their definition of performance hasn't changed. So
Right. And that will change as time goes on, right? Because the problem feels very complex, although just like building a ramp, accessibility for everyone is accessibility for everyone. Better communication for me is better communication for you. It's better communication for everyone in the workplace. So, as you said, systems are complicated.
yeah,
We tend to overcomplicate systems because we're overcomplicating with the challenges. The challenge is not everyone is getting the communication they need. So if we improve communication across the board, there's ways to do that.
I think it has to be, it definitely has to be not just the manager, though. I think it has to be the admin staff up to the CEO. Because if you're talking to someone about making appointments, with you say you're a coach, for example, I'm not saying this has happened to me, but say you're a coach, maybe, and you're speaking to the admin staff and they've been directed by the manager to do something, but you've asked them and they don't follow up, and then the manager hasn't got the communication, and then the communication just breaks down. And so who's the one who looks like a clown? Not the clown, sorry. Maybe that's not the right word. The one who hasn't followed through on their work, who's looking like the unprofessional one there. I mean, often it goes back to the employee, despite the fact that you've communicated what you need, what you want. I think it's key to review systems, to follow up and see. It's a passion of mine, just to kind of understand really that we're talking about leadership, but there's that classic cliche, isn't there? There's no I in team.
Yep. But there is me.
You're in the yes. Well, you've got a team, haven't you?
No, in the word team,
Oh.
there's no I, but there is me.
There is
Like people are in there. It's just not about the individual. It's not I. It's everybody's whole self in a team makes a really good team.
That's so beautiful. So beautiful. I think It's pragmatism versus the reality of also that, we look on the outside of things, just we're looking at the individual, we're looking at the organization, but then we're looking, at the political climate.
Everything layers on top of everything. So even solutions that are simple, ostensibly simple fixes, especially if you're in a corporate, nothing is simple. It's not difficult because the actual fix is difficult. It's difficult because systems are complex.
How do you break them down? How do you do something so simple as include no, we're not being sponsored by Calendly for this one, but we should be. Something like, you have to make appointments with a client. How do you put that into a system in a startup so they're then able to make it fluent for everybody, that nobody misses meetings, that nobody feels that kind of shame when you can't find the link,
Right.
just these basic things like that. How do you get someone to really take that seriously, not as a suggestion, but implement it in their everyday work, yeah.
The smaller the better. The sooner you start, the better.
Mm,
Right? So if anyone is starting their team or in a startup, we often skip the systems part. This is why I have a job. We often skip the systems part when we're setting something up because
mm.
we're just doing our best with what we have at the time. Um, because when we think about a system, we think about a software or again, something big, something complex. A system is Calendly. A system is an existing tool to solve a particular problem without manual input. Um, but in a business, there's so many of those things that it's like you're staring at a mountain that's insurmountable. When if we broke it down into what the actual challenges are, and your neurodivergent people on staff are really good at this, they'll tell you exactly what the challenge is. And often it breaks down to something really, really simple. Can I, in my office, trade in overhead lighting for a lamp?
Well, yeah, exactly, yeah.
Every But it's simple. It's just one type of light or another type of light. So we have the co-chair of the diversity group at NHS in the UK.
Mhm.
He said that they have an order form. You go to the order form like you would order any other supplies and just order them to like order the removal of the fluorescent light and a lamp. And they added it in as an option to their order form. The company already orders supplies. They already have a system for ordering.
I'm sure.
It's just adding in something very, very small that you maybe never thought of, but it's not complicated.
Just needs a creative answer to whatever is already there. Or, I don't know, it just needs a different yeah, exactly as you said, just something simple can make a lot of difference. But don't make it a quick fix, put it in and then forget about it. Go back to what you originally agreed. Go in, get someone to do an audit, like someone like Empower Her, my company. Come in, that's a shameless plug, and think about, what are we doing in the company now? How can we like see what's working, what's not working? What simple changes can we make? Is it about the education? Is it like I said, from the people who were in the admin to the people who were in the CEO position, decision making positions? Is it about providing a small one day every 6 months or something when it's neurodiversity awareness week? It's just been that in the UK. Just doing a one day workshop, online or in person. And don't make it one of those workshops where people have to do it as part of their lunch break, Do it as a separate
Yeah.
day, a separate day where people can get together, they can have that dialogue, they can have those ideas together. And, maybe they'll come up with ideas as well. And remember, if you do one thing in this way, and we're focused on neurodivergent way of thinking, often it will benefit the whole of the organization. The people who are neurotypical will also benefit from a different way of mixing things up, really.
And honestly, the onus does need to be more on companies.
Mm,
The employee is an individual. They are trying to manage their whole life. They are trying to they're just one person in their life. The company is a company. And if you care about your bottom line as a company, then you want to get the best from the people who work for you. If you want to get the best from the people who work for you, you have to bring in the resources sometimes that are needed when times are shifting, when things are shifting, if you are a workplace that is lucky enough to have access to neurodivergent individuals, I cannot recommend an external audit from somebody like Empower Her more strongly. You don't know what you don't know. You know what you know. And if you are lucky enough to have neurodivergent creative brains on your staff, then you have some of the most loyal, committed, hardworking, creative, pattern recognizing problem solvers that you could ever hope to find. And if you lose them, you're an idiot. Ginny's not allowed to say this. So that's why I'm.
But if you do lose them, that's how you know that you're losing them, because they're highly skilled people who, who don't recognize for their talents. And it's unnecessarily so that, in fact, from Deloitte, which is a big organization worldwide, but Deloitte UK, 10 to 15% of the people in that large organization are neurodivergent. So that's, considering how many people work in Deloitte, I would Google it, but I won't do that during the podcast. That's too much multitasking. Look at the number of people that work in Deloitte in the UK. 10 to 15% of that organization's people employed in that organization are neurodivergent. So, don't lose the team. They get burnt out. They'll get burnt out. They're high performing. It just goes unnoticed, and they'll get burnt out and then move on to the next organization. You don't want to lose your top talent.
Yeah. So let's do one more hard sentence. What do you wish more workplaces understood about their neurodivergent professionals?
Yeah. So I think I would hope across some of the things that we've said today, the biggest gap is between the intention of putting a sort of adjustment in and the implementation of effectively putting that in. So the policies are there. The policies are there. Like I've mentioned, there's probably company-wide. There's definitely company-wide policies. There's definitely, the Equality Act in the UK. What is a similar kind of thing in the US, is there?
There's the American with Disabilities Act, but it's and I think that some would say that it's similar. Both of them have their pros and cons.
Okay. But I mean, across the various case studies which you'll find either in my blog on empowerher.com or in my own experience from this podcast, if you listen again a couple of times, I'm telling you from my lived experience, basically, is what I'm saying. These are not things I've pulled out from a book somewhere. These are things that I've really experienced in my life. And I'm nearly 50. You wouldn't think so, but I am. So adjustments are acknowledged in companies. So we get, I've previously got examples of, we take this very seriously. Okay, if you took it really seriously, why do you need to implement it properly? The feedback raised is without clarity, that you've given. Yeah. And where's the dialogue around that? So those key things, adjustments, acknowledged but not really implemented, followed up and pulled through. The feedback is raised, but where's this? Also, we talked about rejection dysphoria earlier and about our professional ego. Look, we all want to feel like we belong. We want to feel like that we're supported. And so we want the feedback delivered in a way that is neurodivergent friendly. If you're dyslexic, for example, you don't want to receive an email which is like 500 words long. You want to maybe arrange a meeting with you or something simple like that, and just sort of give them the feedback, acknowledge their strengths. Use what I often use. It's called the Pemberton's rules of feedback. So look that up, Pemberton's rules of feedback. Basically, you acknowledge, you ask the person that you're giving feedback to, ask them to acknowledge their strengths. You then reinforce that. Ask them then to acknowledge things that could have gone better. Then you can reinforce that with further steps, give clear feedback and things that can clearly take away and understand, not just give some 500 word long email.
Wow. Because honestly, what you're describing about the feedback is so frustrating because unclear feedback always comes back to the employee. Meaning it's going to make the employee look bad, not the manager look bad. The manager says, I gave you feedback. If your feedback was trash, your feedback was trash. There's nothing I can do with trash feedback. I don't know what, hey, we could really do better on this next time. I don't know what that means.
Yeah, it's
And then
not
when I
right.
say, what does that mean? Then you ask me why I'm being combative. I don't want to be combative. Why don't you just tell me what it fucking means in the first place? And then I didn't need to ask.
You like to swear on your podcast.
Oh, yes, I swear. Why would you just tell me in the first goddamn place what you needed me to do, and then I could actually do it?
Yeah.
You understand that feedback requires metrics. Feedback requires something specific.
Structure. We would like structure. Neurodivergent people.
Instruction.
Yeah. Neurodivergent people, I think generally in life, people, they prefer a structure because there's safety, there's emotional safety in that, and we know where it's going. How many people, you know, get in a car and go and decide to go to a destination and just say, "Oh, just drive along." Usually you have a map. These days you have Google Maps. Back in the 1990s, we had proper maps. I'm old enough to know. And you used to have a destination. You could see where it was going. So this is the kind of parallel I use when I'm talking about feedback. And people find that they feel safe to reflect. If you're being in the situation where something's come up at work, maybe you've had some negative feedback, maybe you've had some client complain about you. That's a vulnerable situation to be in, and generally people don't feel happy about being complained about. But if you have a dialogue, if you've had a chance to respond, then it's a learning point.
Right. Right. There's my kid's dad used to work for a long time for the Israeli army and different stuff there. And at the end, normally you have an investigation, which is called a tahkir in Hebrew, but they would have what they called tahkim, which means like a smartening. Instead of an investigation, you have a smartening. What can we pick at here where we can be smarter for next time? Some things went wrong, some things maybe went right but could be better, some things completely fell through the cracks. Where can we be smarter next time as opposed to what broke down here?
Exactly. And this is where the thing comes around, which if you wanted to be genuinely neuro-inclusive in your company, the training's key, but the biggest shift should be treating reasonable adjustments. First of all, that people can ask for them without being patronized or ignored. And, the process is disclosure, dialogue, implementation, and review. Those are the 4 points. Disclosure, dialogue, implementation, and review. And without that, it depends on individual managers. Is that if there's no framework, people can't be consistent, and there you lose that emotional safety if you're inconsistent.
I'm not trying to be a problem to my workplace. I just need all the information and I need all the context and I need it to make sense. And sometimes when we are asking our managers in a workplace for more information and more context, they don't have the answers. And therefore, their sidestep is to focus on you challenging them or whatever. It's not an intentional sidestep, I don't think. It's just a human nature way of protecting yourself from looking stupid. Whereas if you didn't know something or I didn't know something, I'd say, not a clue. Let me get back to you.
They're in a vulnerable spot there, aren't they? Is that due to, often I've wondered when I've worked with people, whether their manager, when I've talked to a colleague, person a client that I'm working with, and they talk about how they've had a supervision with their manager, and since they've been coaching with me, the manager-employee relationship has improved. I'm wondering what the basis of that one at the beginning of the process, but as it goes through, you realize as it goes through, that it's about them being able to feel that they're able to advocate for themselves more, that they're able to feel that it's not that the manager's trying to get at them or something like that, that the manager is encouraged by, them trying to be able to you talk about trying to have ask for the information from the manager, but also the clients that I'm working with, they become able to be more self-sufficient, more autonomous, and they don't feel so much the victim of their own neurodivergence anymore. They feel like they can move forward and be able to follow up, question, share, and the manager's happy that they are investing in their own self-development. Often I thinking, send me the managers. Send me the manager's email because maybe the manager's so excited about the coaching that the employees receiving, they should be also receiving the coaching themselves. It's something I sometimes I do suggest, and I say, "Well, pass my email on. You're fine about doing that." But yeah, I think it's about also being able to advocate for yourself, showing that you have permission to do that as well.
People ask me all the time, they're like, "How did you get this way? Like, how did you talk about yourself so positively,
Mm.
and you talk about your ADHD so positively." There's a lot of reasons for that. First of all, massive privilege.
Mm,
And
okay.
basically 5 years of unemployment or underemployment or building my own business when I moved to the US. I had 5 years to do my own thing, to sit, to think, to be alone, to figure it out on my own. So people ask me like, "How do you do that?" And I can't give you any advice that's actionable and practical for your life.
Mm.
Cuz take 5 years off your life and go sit on your couch and stare into the garden is not practical, actionable advice.
Isn't it?
Going
Well, that's maybe these days because people are, like, not used to being bored. They're too much involved
being
in
bored for 5 years. That's when you fix your brain is you bore yourself for 5 years.
Yeah, you probably were
5
finding
years
some good
intensely.
examples, yeah. Good
Yeah, I slowed everything down. I saddled myself with a 12-person team. You know why?
Mm.
Because I can't run full speed ahead.
No, why
Staring to my
why
people.
should you have to?
I have to slow down.
Yeah.
I had to do one thing at a time. I had to be very bored. But for the people who ask me, "How do you do this?" There's Ginny and coaches and people who know how to teach you how to do this. So if you ever asked yourself, "How do I learn to not give a shit?" Like, well, wait, I got this
And
answer.
vegan, that will probably do it because it's like the hardest job in the world, yeah. And also coaching because you really have to, working with people as humans, really. That's really it. You're a human, I'm a human. Let's take away all the preconceived ideas about what I think that looks like. And let's open up and create a space where you can be safe in doing so and question and ask questions and learn from that because that's what it's about really. But also feeling the strength that you can be a professional and just take a breath.
Jenny, thank you so much for this conversation. One of the things that really stood out today is how many professionals, and when I say professionals, I mean super capable, super competent people,
Yeah.
spend years masking and hiding parts of themselves just to survive in workplaces that and in a system that was never designed for their brains,
Mm.
never designed for how their brains work. Understanding those systems and learning how to advocate for what we really need, as you said, self-advocacy, unapologetic self-advocacy, I think is what I heard from
But
you.
yeah, also, but sometimes you have to be quite diplomatic.
Exactly.
Otherwise,
Diplomatic, yet unapologetic.
oh, that's tricky. That's a skill. That's a skill. That's a combination. It's a communication skill. That's communication skill.
That's a tightrope, 100%.
Yes, so that's something I do work in is, how to communicate something, not being too abrupt, but being, and honest enough, to be able to
Mhm.
explain what you mean. Yeah.
Yep. Understanding those systems and how they're stacked against you is such an important step towards building workplaces where people can succeed without burning themselves out and without allowing themselves to become burnt out.
Mm.
So, squirrels, if you'd like to learn more about Jenny's work and empower her, links are in the show notes so you can connect with her. And if this episode resonated with you, please share it with someone who might need to hear it, especially somebody who's navigating leadership while also navigating neurodivergence, while also navigating being a human on the planet. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for being here and spending some time with us, squirrels. And until next time, hydrate and take a deep breath.